Well, welcome into the Money Wisdom Podcast powered by Johnson Brunetti. My name is Jake Dozer. I'm a certified financial planner on our team here in Connecticut, joined, of course, by my colleague up to the north, Nick. Introduce yourself, if you would.
We are the North, Jake. Thank you for that intro. Viewers, listeners, welcome back. I'm Nick Colantuono. I am a certified financial planner up here in Boston. We're glad you're with us. We've got an awesome episode for you today on the podcast.
Well, I'm looking forward to our content in all seriousness. This is a question that somebody sent in, we do hear quite often. And we say that sometimes. Sometimes we hear like conceptual questions a lot because of the nature of being a specialist. We work in retirement planning. We only work with people who are retired or have recently retired or are approaching retirement rather. And so there's obviously these trends and commonalities. But this specifically, whether it be with clients of ours or whether it be with folks who have yet to become clients of ours, is a question we hear a lot. You know, it's all around the timing of retirement. So here's the question: should I work 5 more years or retire now? You know, that's the question a lot of folks want to ask. I was asked that this morning. Hey, I'm 57. Do I have to work until I'm 62? In their mind, 62 is the significance because of Social Security. When can I retire? You know, it doesn't matter if the question is, can I retire 5 years early? Can I retire early? Can I not work 5 more years? What is, the question is what's the best way to do this? And so we've got a couple things, like some thoughts, bullet pointed thoughts of how to approach this question. But it starts number one, and I want to get your feedback on this, Nick. It starts number one, asking yourself, can I support my lifestyle? Tell us about that. I mean, we got to start somewhere from a planning perspective.
You're exactly right. And a lot of people don't realize that the biggest difference between working and not working is now all of a sudden you now need to start paying yourself, right? So the idea that you've worked and earned and saved for so long, and now in retirement, that paycheck stops, where the world we live in does not. The bills keep coming, the expenses keep increasing. The world we live in keeps getting more and more expensive. So the question behind the question is, as you mentioned, Jake, it's not necessarily, should I work another 5 years or another 3 years? It's, when can I comfortably afford to just no longer work at all, right? When can I retire? And everybody approaches it from a very different standpoint. Some folks come in and they say, oh, I'm retiring in 921 days and 6 hours, right? They know to the day when they're never going to work again. And then some people are like, look, I know I could probably retire now, but I love what I do. I like the people I work with. It energizes me. It's not necessarily, I don't feel like I'm breaking my back every day. So I'm going to keep going a few more years. And then a few more years turns into a few more years. And then a few years later, they're still saying a few more years. So I know we have clients on both ends of those spectrums. What it ultimately comes down to, folks, is you need to understand really what it takes to support your lifestyle in that next phase of life. So if you are still in that phase where you're still working and you're still saving, well, that means you still have opportunities to improve upon your situation. So you need to first and foremost just take inventory of your assets, figure out what's where, what's in retirement accounts, what's in Roth accounts, what's in non-retirement accounts. Do you have any deferred compensation that you're owed at retirement that's going to hit you as income? Or, God forbid, are you going to stand to inherit money if a loved one passes away? And what are the tax implications of that? So really just taking a step back. I always say we go up into our helicopter, you go to 10,000 feet. You need to look at everything, not just from an investment standpoint, but from a tax standpoint, an insurance standpoint, a real estate standpoint, and you need to know where you are. The second thing you have to do is take account for income, not just income while you're working. And as you have the ability to, further improve upon your situation through positive cash flow, where to direct that income towards saving or towards experiences, but figure out what that income is going to be in retirement. Social Security, pensions, what the income need from your assets will be. And that's where it really comes down to knowing your expenses. So I know I'm just kind of throwing a lot out there, but again, the 3 main factors: take inventory of your assets, factor in all your income streams, and then figure out what life costs, right? And whatever the difference between what's coming in and what's going out, well, that's where you have assets with which to make up the difference. So it all comes down to having a plan. Obviously, these are very general and sort of broad questions, But again, the question behind the question is what everyone coming through our doors wants an answer to. When can I retire?
Yeah, and some to your point, some folks come in and they say, "I want to retire at this date. Does it work?" Some folks say, "This is how much it costs me to live my lifestyle based on how much I've saved. Could I retire now or in a year from now?" So there's, to your point, there's a lot of vantage points from which we can approach this, but the core question becomes: is am I going to be okay in retirement, and when can I be okay?
Yeah.
So to your point, that client I mentioned that I met with earlier, I said, "Hey, we're taking a certain amount of withdrawal every month to supplement the income while your significant other continues to work because there's an age gap." And so we need to break this question down into a few pieces. Question number one is the amount of money you're withdrawing sustainable? Question number two, is it a tax-friendly amount? Because you could be taking 5,000 a month and it be sustainable, but it's actually more than you should be taking from an efficiency of tax perspective, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. So in this example, I said, look, the amount you're taking out is affordable. The amount you're taking out is going to result in you paying more taxes than if you took out a little bit less. And there's a break point that you're hitting that's costing you extra in your Medicare and on your federal taxes. Does that mean you shouldn't do it? Well, no. If you want to do that because that's what you want to use your money for, okay. Just know that you are costing yourself a little bit more in taxes and insurance than if you reduced it a little bit. And can you squeeze your lifestyle into that reduced income, right? Because you shouldn't not spend your money just because it might save you a little bit of taxes, because that will always be true. It's
Yeah.
more about, does the money I'm creating out of my portfolio by withdrawals put me in a situation where it can facilitate my lifestyle? Should I take excessive withdrawals? Probably not from an efficiency perspective. But if you want to, it's one of these things. Taxes are the tail of the dog. Your lifestyle is the dog. Don't allow the tail to wag the dog. Let the dog wag the tail. That is, make sure that you have enough money to support your lifestyle. And if you can save tax along the way, that's great. But should saving taxes be your primary goal? No, because that means you'll never spend any money. And that's what you saved it for, is to spend money. So I think it's important to prioritize these things.
You're absolutely right. And that's where goal planning is such a big part of it. And I know this next
Huge.
bullet point here is, well, what if you want to keep working, right? When would it make sense to keep working? And my mind immediately goes to goal planning. A lot of people say, well, I could retire today, but in my mind, I always thought that by the time I retired, I would be debt free, or, we have this other goal of wanting to, purchase that secondary property. So I always position that where, that's empowering, right? Because now you know that you're working, not because you have to, but you're working because you want to, because there are still things that you want to accomplish. So again, that's a kind of glass half full versus half empty sort of situation. It's like, well, should I work 5 more years? Do I have to work 5 more years, or do I get to work 5 more years? Because that means that, if I like what I do, and again, it's energizing me and it's, adding to my pot versus taking from it, yet it also means I can accomplish these other goals. Well, then that's a win-win. So oftentimes we're encouraging people, look, you're not working because you want to, you're working, or you're not working because you have to, you're working because you want to. And oftentimes there's a desire to want to continue saving for retirement, even though they have enough, right? Maybe they're thinking about kids or grandkids, right? And they're thinking about this idea of wanting to, leave money behind. And oftentimes the IRAs become, although they're not the most tax efficient place to do it, it's the easiest place to do it. So obviously, keep working if you want to keep growing your money, right? Positive cash flow leads for more savings. Also, if you want to potentially increase your income in retirement, obviously continuing to work means paying more into Social Security, which in later years means more money out of Social Security. And in the meantime, it means delaying that Social Security benefit. So again, more money coming in is typically never a bad thing, at least from a big picture standpoint. What else, right? Avoiding sequence of risk, right? So if the market's falling, people would say, well, I think I'll just keep working, right? Let this market kind of stabilize. And at least I know I'm putting money into my 401k as opposed to taking money out of accounts that are falling in value at the same time. Healthcare costs, if you're not yet 65, a lot of people want to get to that sort of milestone where they become eligible for Medicare. And then, like I said, a lot of people just find work to be engaging. It's where they get their social interactions. It's where they, sort of find their sense of purpose. And, I know our employers is one of them. It's not, we're very close knit as a group, but we also do a lot for our community. And that's a lot of people like doing that as well. So, I mean, how can you further elaborate on all that, Jake? Again, I know I just kind of threw a lot out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head earlier. Goal-based investing. You want to invest based on a defined outcome. And specifically in retirement, most of the time the outcome we're shooting for is, can I afford to retire? But there are a segment of our clients who've graduated beyond the can I afford to retire? And they've graduated towards, do I want to work? Not because I have to, but because I want to. And so you have to be able to assign purpose to the dollars beyond the necessary amount. So it could be through an analysis we've determined, yeah, you could afford to retire tomorrow, but maybe you don't want to because, to Nick's point, you find purpose around work, or it's your sense of community, or you love it. And maybe all you need is that peace of mind to say, if I retired right now, I'd be okay. And now I get to go into work because I want to. And the stress of the pressure of having to work is gone. And now I'm in a different headspace as I approach this job. And now I can appreciate it. Now I can stop and smell the roses. And, you're entering, I've heard it said, an advisor I know, he calls it TBD, 2 bad days. And so he said, day number 1, I'll give you a free pass. Day number 2, my boss has a second bad day in a row and he takes it out of me. I'm out of here, But what a different state of mind to be saving for, hey, look, if I work 1 extra year, well, then I can take those vacations and guilt free. Or maybe if I work 2 extra years, I can now afford that second property, whatever it may be. So I think it's important to quantify, when do you want to retire? Do you want to retire because you can't work anymore? Is it because you want to no longer work? Do you want to work at all in retirement? What are the extras that you want to save for? So it's always assigning purpose to the dollars. It's putting a goal on each thing that you want to accomplish in life. And then we can answer those questions in a much more pragmatic way, where the question isn't, can you just afford to retire? Well, no, it's, do you want to maintain your lifestyle? Do you want to increase your lifestyle? Let's really zoom in on the things you want and need. And let's make sure all the needs are covered and as many of the wants as possible are covered. And so you got to have a target to aim for, and then we can fill the ammunition towards that goal. I think now is a good time for us to mention, Nick, we do have a kit that can kind of start helping you answer these questions. And if you're listening or you're watching, we'd be happy to send that your way. If you simply text the word kit to 800-757-0436. The kit we have today is the Are You Ready to Retire starter kit. So it's going to give you an actionable list of, these are the things I need to start putting together that we've mentioned, both sort of the hard numbers and the soft numbers, which is like the things you want. And how do you aim for that? So again, if you want to get your hands on that, we'll send it to you free of charge. Simply text the word KIT in order to get the Are You Ready to Retire starter kit. Text the word KIT to 800-757-0436. And we'll be sure to send that your way. So we talked about, timing of retirement, and that's something we review with our clients and adjust all the time, and look at how successful it will be and things of that nature. I do want to flip the page a little bit to, I think, what Nick has become you and I's favorite section of the podcast, which is the mailbag minute, kind of our lightning round, and where we try to answer a few questions, 60 seconds or less. So I've got some questions for you. Inquiring minds want to know what your answers are. So first up, we've got a question that is on a lot of people's minds. I need to start planning for my retirement. How do I start?
Well, it's a great question. And what I would say is give yourself a little credit, because if you're listening to this podcast, you are probably well on your way. What I would say is everything that we've talked about over the last 15 minutes. Take inventory. Just know your numbers. You need to have a relationship with your money. Nobody is going to care more about your money than you. And if you don't really care about your money, well, then, there can be a big gap there when it comes to planning for retirement. So take a step back. Just realize this next phase of life is very different than the one you've been in to get to where you are today. And as a result, hitting the reset button often makes a lot of sense. The game changes. We need to replace your paycheck, right? We need to make sure that your money's working as hard for you as you've worked for it. We also need to make sure it's going to last as long as you will. So have a plan. But where do you start? You start right here on the Money Wisdom Podcast.
I love it. Next, we have a question about managing money wisely. The question is, my annuities are making a good return, but I'm concerned my 401k is not making money. I want to move it, but I'm not sure where to put it. Nick, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, good question, and something that we hear pretty common. Unfortunately, anyway, a lot of 401ks just limit you on your flexibility and on your control with that money. So for this viewer, this listener who submitted this question, well, they commented that their annuities are making a good rate of return, but their 401k isn't. So maybe their annuities are in guaranteed or fixed accounts where, in this case, if their 401ks aren't making money, it could be because the market has fallen, where the annuities, their safe money, has not. So what it all comes down to is balance. And you need to know that wherever your money lives, again, not just this bucket versus this bucket, but all of those buckets, is it structured in a way that's consistent with your comfort level with risk? So I typically am an advocate of, you retire, why wouldn't you want more flexibility and control over your money? So this pertains to the 401k. Usually you leave an employer, take that money with you. Now, I wouldn't just go and put it all in this annuity that this viewer likes. That might make sense. But the first thing you're going to want to do is move it to an IRA. That is not a taxable event. And right off the bat, you can then step back and say, okay, should some of this money be in an annuity like the one I have? Should some of this money be in the market? Should some of this money be in more income generating vehicles? So point being, you need to have a plan in place, and you need to have someone that you're confident in having that conversation with.
Last but not least, we have an important question about life after working, which has really been the theme of today. Besides investments, how do you earn income after retirement?
Good question. Income comes in all different shapes and sizes. As this viewer has alluded to, right? They realize that their money is now working for them and generating income for them. The other most common sources of income we see in retirement for clients are, the low-hanging fruit, the Social Security, the pension, if you're lucky enough to have one, rental income, if you're lucky enough to have it. And a lot of people just like working. It doesn't mean that they're clocking in 9 to 5 or, traveling 3 times a week like they were when they had their careers. But I don't know, Jake, I always envision a retirement where I'm the guy hosing down the golf carts at the end of the day. If that means I get to, if they give me a little break on my greens fees. So again, for everyone, it looks different. We always hear the joke about the person who wants to be the Walmart greeter, or my mother, for example, she retired. She had a long career in healthcare. She always joked that her dream job was to work at Whole Foods so that she would get, her groceries at a discount. So look, this is a great question, because retiring does not necessarily mean, no longer working again. It's a very different phase of life. So there are a lot of different ways to get not only to retirement, but also to get through retirement in a way that you're comfortable with, and that still gives you that sense of community and purpose, and replaces your paycheck.
Good stuff. So if you've been tuning in and watching to this point, we appreciate your patronage. We appreciate you liking this video, perhaps subscribing so that you make sure that you see the next episode. And again, be sure, if these are things that are relevant to you, reach out to us. Get that Are You Ready to Retire starter kit by simply texting the word KIT to 800-757-0436. That's in the show notes below. And if you know somebody who would benefit from this conversation, share this video to them. Otherwise, from the team at Johnson Brunetti, myself, Nick, and the rest of us on the Money Wisdom podcast, we appreciate you tuning in. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Johnson Brunetti is a marketing name for the businesses of JB Capital and JN Financial. Investment advisory services offered through JB Capital LLC. Insurance products offered through JN Financial LLC.